Hey guys, tomorrow I'm 4 weeks out, so I was going to do one vlog a week to kind of document this final bit of prep. I'll be honest, I wanted to skip this one. I'll probably want to skip the next one, the one after that, and the one after that. Frankly, it's getting really fucking difficult, and not in the ways that I anticipated. Like going into this, I knew, part of the reason I held off trying bodybuilding for as long as I did, I've been competing in strength sports, training strength sports, for 10 years almost. For 10 years, 2026. So I've been doing this for a long time, and bodybuilding was always kind of, you get into lifting weights, and usually someone's inspiration for getting into the gym is bodybuilding, is Arnold Schwarzenegger, Sylvester Stallone, these action stars. And usually people will discover that there are other strength sports, powerlifting, Olympic lifting, strongman, CrossFit, high rocks, whatever, is out there. They'll usually discover that as they get into the gym and get active and all that stuff, and people will find the thing that they like. And so it's the same for me. Like, obviously I started lifting weights. Strength was a goal, but it was not the goal. I wanted to be, bigger. You want the better physique, the muscles and stuff. And not even necessarily, I didn't necessarily go to the gym thinking someday I'm going to be a bodybuilder, but I got in the gym thinking, hey, my arms are stick thin, they're straight lines. I used to be a long distance runner, so I was like 130 pounds at 17, 18 years old. I could run a mile in 5 minutes, but I couldn't do a single pull-up type of thing. So that the motivation getting into the gym is, I just want to look more like that image, not necessarily be that image, but move in that direction, have more in as far as like similarities to that physique. So when I started going to the gym, it was like hypertrophy. I didn't know what hypertrophy was. I didn't know what the different ways of training were, but I knew that I wanted to build the muscle, and so that's hypertrophy. And so you go in with the bro split that kind of everyone new to getting into the gym does. You got your arm day, you got your bench press is the king of everything, and you're not really deadlifting or squatting that much, and you reluctantly do leg day, but arm day is your favorite, chest days, all that stuff. And as I got into powerlifting and strongman via CrossFit, especially start competing and then start doing fairly well in competition and getting pretty strong, having these lifts that are in a certain percentage of, the world population. Even as low as the 500-pound deadlift, when I crossed that milestone. And, I would go on to cross the 600-pound deadlift, the 700-pound deadlift milestone. I've done 700 for reps. That thought in your mind, that idea that bodybuilding is another sport you can compete in, and it's another thing that's similar. You're in the gym, you're doing the similar work. A lot of people think about it, even if they don't say it out loud. But a lot of people consider oh, is that something I would want to do? And especially being especially I started competing at the pro level in strongman, and to be at 198, which is the class that I am most competitive in, I have to get pretty lean, and I have just objectively, through the lens of bodybuilding, I have a better physique than most strongman competitors. Some of it's genetic, I'm genetically predisposed to have the more bodybuilding physique than an average person, and I was also leaner in strongman than most strongman competitors. And it was pointed out by even before I publicly or out loud made it known that I was thinking about bodybuilding, it's a comment that I would receive from people I was competing against and stuff like that. Especially, again, as I started competing at U90 and doing these international shows, at a high level, and just being, going to these shows really lean, I would get comments about it. And so the thought had been there for a while. But the reason I never pulled the trigger until now, the reason I held off on bodybuilding for so long, is because I knew with as lean as I get to compete at U90 and strongman, I knew bodybuilding was still a different level of challenge regarding nutrition and dieting. That it was a different level in terms of pain tolerance. That, strength training is hard. Doing sets of really heavy deadlift is hard. It's stressful. But it's not the same. It's different, and it's as hard as it is. I would say it's less painful than really pushing yourself on a bodybuilding workout. Bodybuilding workouts are shorter than strength training. My sessions now are like an hour and a half, whereas with powerlifting and strongman, they can be upwards of 3 hours at the highest. But they're really high intensity. Rest is something that's controlled, so heart rate and lung capacity are constantly tested. You're doing movements that are painful under a lot of fatigue, where that urge to rest and relax a little bit is there. And the idea with hypertrophy is proximity to failure. Now, you're training close to failure with powerlifting and strongman too, but when say you're doing 3 reps on a squat and you have 1 rep in reserve, that's pretty close to failure. That's still not the same type of pain as doing 4 sets of 10 close to failure and having the rest limited. So there was always that hesitation to pull the trigger on bodybuilding, to verbally, outwardly say, I'm gonna try bodybuilding. I'm thinking about bodybuilding, because then it sets the expectation that you kind of trap yourself in. Is if you say I'm thinking about trying bodybuilding and then you never try it, there's that hit to your pride that, oh man, I told people I was going to try bodybuilding, and now I don't want to do it because this is that's just not something. That's not a pain I'm trying to experience right now. But because people knew you were thinking about it, now they know that you didn't do it, type of thing. And so I expected bodybuilding to be very difficult. I expected it to be one of the most difficult things I've ever done, and it is. And it still exceeded my expectations. And it's kind of like when I was on the submarine. People would ask me, oh, I could never do that, being on a submarine. Like, I imagine that would be so difficult. And being on a submarine is difficult. But the things you expect to be difficult don't really bother you that much. And the things that bother you a lot are things you didn't think about, things that you never considered as being bothersome. Things like, going 24 hours without taking a shower, especially, depending on what you did for cleanup, because there's a lot of cleaning in the Navy. Maybe you have a little bit of oil on you. Maybe you have a lot of oil on you if you're a mechanic or an egg hanger. And, say, just based on the ship's schedule, say maybe depending on if you have a reverse osmosis unit or, I can't remember what else they used to make fresh water, because we had a reverse osmosis unit which replaced, I have too much brain fog to remember right now anyway. But if they didn't have enough fresh water made on the boat, because what people don't realize is, a submarine is obviously surrounded by seawater. So any water you use for like cooking, for cleaning yourself, for cleaning your clothes, that sort of thing is done with fresh water that's made by processing the seawater on the boat. And the machines that process the seawater to give the boat, to store fresh water and make fresh water, they have certain limits and capacities that sometimes the crew overuses, sometimes the machines break and need to be repaired, and while they're down for repair, the storage tanks run out. There's a number of reasons that fresh water can be too low. And so sometimes you don't even have the choice to go without a shower. Sometimes you don't even have the choice to go without doing laundry. And I can tell you, when you haven't showered in a couple days, and when your coveralls have not been washed in a couple wears, and you're in a hot space and your balls are sweating, and you're trying to pay attention, trying to do this technical maintenance, it is wildly uncomfortable. Like, similar to the discomfort I'm experiencing now, actually, where it's like, it's just, you want more than anything to get out of this discomfort, and there's nothing you can do about it. And again, when you talk about someone that's never been in the Navy, never been on a submarine, and the things that they expect to be difficult, they expect, being away from home, not being able to call or use the internet, like being isolated, being with a bunch of other dudes, having recycled air. They think about all these things as what's going to be difficult, and none of that stuff really fucking matters when you're at sea. But little things or things that appear to be little, or things that you would never even think about, end up being like horrible, like endurance activities. And so it's kind of the same thing here, right? Like, going into this, I expected the diet to be very difficult, which it is. But I expected it to be difficult because of, like, I'm craving all these foods, which I am, or difficult because of the feeling of hunger, which it is. That is difficult. But those aren't the parts that are making this one of the hardest things I've ever done before. And the cravings and the feeling of being hungry, like I want to eat something, don't even rank near the top for why this is so difficult. Being this depleted, being this low body fat, and being in this deep of a deficit, like, just it's hard to describe, because I want to say my energy is like below zero. And anyone that's been really tired before, like, oh yeah, I know what that's like. No, you don't. It's different than that. Like, those are the words that I want to use to describe it, but it doesn't express, it doesn't capture what it actually feels like unless someone has already been through it. Because I have been dead tired. I've been awake for over 30 hours. I've done very strenuous physical activity with not enough rest and stuff like that. And I've been dead tired, and it doesn't compare to this. But as far as using English words that I know and can string together into a sentence, saying I'm below zero energy is just the only way I can think to describe it. But it doesn't communicate it properly to someone that has not experienced this. And that is so much more difficult than the aspects of depletion I was thinking about going into this. The brain fog is absolutely insane. I just, all day, every day, I just make the dumbest mistakes. And I've heard the term prep brain, and I know it's kind of like, inside joke might be the right word for it, I don't know. But it's like the inside joke with bodybuilders. They talk about prep brain. They talk about, it's almost like girl dinner or boy math or whatever fucking, pet terms there are to describe, not a stereotype, but like a slang type of concept. I don't know. So I've heard it, and I'm familiar with, oh yeah, people that get prep brain, brain fog, whatever. But again, not having experienced it prior to now, I vaguely knew what it was and kind of wrote it off as like an exaggeration or, something, kind of not made up, but I can't really think of the proper way to describe it. Now that I'm going through it, it's horrible. There's certain things I can't remember. I mean, I'll be completely honest. Right now, I couldn't tell you if I'm 36 or 37 years old. And I realized yesterday morning that I can't remember if I'm turning 37 this year or if I am 37 right now. And that's something that I do at my age, I do actually forget how old I am from time to time. Like every, several months, I'll just like, wait, how old am I? And I'll ask ChatGPT or Google it or just use a calculator or something. Oh, someone's upset. But legitimately, like, I have no idea right now which one of those it is. I'll do things like I'm preparing my protein ice cream with the Ninja Creamy that I like to make. And instead of putting an ingredient like in the blender or in the blender cup to blend to make the recipe, I'll accidentally pour it like into the actual ice cream storage container, and like things like that. But it's a lot of like really dumb things. Like this one's embarrassing, but I'll tell you. I was taking my car in to get my oil changed, and to get my tire, I needed new tires. And I texted my girlfriend and I said, this car maintenance might end up being really expensive because now I got to have to check out the air conditioner too, because it's not putting out cold air anymore. And we're getting the summer, it's California, like that can be a big deal. It took me about 48 hours to check whether or not I had the air conditioner set to cold, and I didn't. My air conditioner works just fine. I had it, I remember now that after I realized that it was set to hot air, I remember that the night before it was a little chilly, and after my workout, I was sweaty, I was, breathing heavy, breathing hot air, fogged up the windshield and had to use the hot air to defog the windshield. And because it was a little chilly, but I don't get cold super easily, I didn't need to, I just turned the air off. I didn't have to turn it back to cold. I didn't have to do anything air-wise otherwise. But during the day, it's hot, so I turned the air on the next day on the way to work to cool off, and it was hot air coming out. But I didn't, like, the dashboard shows me at all times, by default, what temperature I have the air set to. And it took me 48 hours to take a look at that. And like that captures in a nutshell the types of mistakes that I'm making just all the time right now. I have trouble balancing, like when I'm walking up and down the stairs at work, I lose my balance a lot. I have to catch myself on the wall or the handrail. It's not like I'm lightheaded or dizzy or fainting or anything like that, although there's a component of that happening as part of this as well. But I just, like, my sense of balance is reduced. Excuse me. At this point of the depletion, like, this is more of a recent thing as I get really low. But there's like a physical pain to how depleted I am. And this is another one that if you haven't experienced it, it's difficult to describe in a way that's going to make sense. But like even just walking to get my steps in, because part of the ways of getting this, for creating a calorie deficit, you can adjust calories coming in and you can adjust calories going out. And if you want to maximize your calories coming in, you have to increase your calories going out. And there's only so many ways and to such extent that you can do that. You can't just add training time. You can't just add cardio necessarily, depending on where you're at. So steps, which is it's called NEAT, or non-exercise activity thermogenesis, basically calories burned through activity that's not specifically exercise, is a way to do that. And just walking, even just standing right now is uncomfortable, and to a degree is painful. And that's just because of how depleted I am. I mean, I am legitimately experiencing symptoms of starvation, which that's really what getting down to single digit body fat and like bodybuilding lean is deliberate controlled starvation. It goes beyond just being a calorie deficit. Like, it's to the point of unhealth. And that's also why it's not sustainable, why bodybuilders are not stage lean indefinitely. I mean, there's other reasons too, but simply put, it's not sustainable long term. It's not healthy. And so as I get closer to the goal, closer to the stage, my body is feeling more, is basically sending me, different signals of discomfort, of pain, of problem, to try, like, hey, we are starving. Like, clearly you don't understand this, so we're going to be giving you messages to let you know that you need to make a correction, because the body, as complex and wonderful and intelligent as it is, doesn't understand that I'm doing this, I'm creating this unhealthy environment and these unhealthy conditions to look really good, to go stand on a stage and have people judge me. Like, the body doesn't understand that. So it is sending all the alarms and warning bells that it can for me to correct the situation, to incentivize and motivate me as if I need that to want to eat a fucking hamburger. And that's just where we're at. But this is easily one of the hardest, if not the hardest thing I've ever done. And this last, I mean, a prep for stage, from what I've seen, talking to, obviously I'm not an experienced, seasoned bodybuilder, but from being in it for the last, 14 months or however long I've been doing this now, and getting involved in the community and expanding my network outside of strongman and powerlifting to bodybuilders, a prep seems to be like 12 to 16 weeks, officially. And it depends on the person, and it depends on what they're prepping for, and where they're at, and there's a number of things that go into it. But it's this last, I would say, 8 weeks, maybe 7 weeks, where the difficulty just absolutely fucking spikes, and it's like any time, like all of my waking time right now